Good evening. I'm Wesley Ford, and I'm part of the communications team here at ILA. We're happy to have you join us today for this ILA webinar on caregivers as coaches. This evening, we'll be listening to a pre-recorded session from our featured speaker, Mai Zaru. Mai is a Palestinian-American PhD candidate and Ferris Simmons Fellow at Southern Methodist University in Texas. With a background in special education and reading education, Zaru takes an interdisciplinary approach in addressing social justice. Through mixed methodologies, she captures the home literacy practices and translanguaging experiences of displaced families, shedding light on narratives that are often overlooked in society. Zaru actively seeks to disseminate her research to diverse audiences through academic writing, spoken word, and poetry, amplifying voices that are frequently marginalized. Through these efforts, she fosters inclusive dialogic spaces that celebrate diverse linguistic experiences of the diaspora. Before we hear from Zaru, who is the 2023 recipient of the ILA Jean S. Chall Research Fellowship for her project, Peer Assisted Learning Strategies with Immigrant Families, we have a brief message from ILA with information about the 2024 awards and grants submission period.
The submission period for the International Literacy Association's 2024 Awards and Grants Program is now open. If you are a graduate student or scholar seeking funding for your research, an author or author team who has published a significant empirical study, or a literacy professional who has left an indelible mark on the field, then we want to hear from you. We have multiple funding opportunities available this year. In addition, we have awards that honor professionals at all stages of their career, from emerging leaders and researchers to those whose lifetime contributions have left a significant mark on the field. The deadline for submissions is March 15th, 2024. Visit our website and submit a nomination for yourself or a colleague today.
We encourage you to visit the ILA website to learn more about the awards requirements and the submission process at literacyworldwide.org/awards. Just a housekeeping note before we start the presentation. The archived closed caption recording of this event will be available within the next 5 days. You'll be able to access that at literacyworldwide.org/digital events. Now let's get started.
Thank you, ILA, for hosting these webinars, for giving us the opportunity to share and learn from one another, and for all of you for being here today as a community. Throughout this webinar, our differences in thought, expertise, and interests are bound to surface. But as they do, I hope you remember the words of Desmond Tutu, who once said, "Differences are not intended to separate or alienate. We are different precisely in order to realize our need for one another." Without further ado, welcome everyone to our webinar, Empowering Caregivers as Literacy Coaches, a webinar on boosting children's literacy development. I'm Mai Zaru, a fourth-year doctoral candidate, and I am thrilled to guide you through this exploration of some effective strategies for supporting caregivers in enhancing children's literacy skills. Today we'll start off by delving into assets, learn more about translanguaging practices, discuss the power of routines, and offer ways for selecting and using children's books for diverse language growth. Think about this webinar as a toolkit, complementing your expertise as caregivers and practitioners. My goal is to offer and equip you with practical insights and tools that you can implement to support the literacy development in your homes. While not all strategies presented here may directly apply to your situation, they might stir your thinking about ways to modify and adapt them to fit your needs. After all, you are the coach, uniquely positioned to customize approaches that resonate with your journey and the assets you bring with you today. Now let's pause for a second and dive into the essence of that word, assets. A 6-letter word that determines, or often determines, who gets into some universities and which applicant is a better fit for a company. So I did what kids these days do. I asked Siri. The prompt response returned a definition stating that an asset is a useful or valuable thing, person, or quality. See, the challenge with that definition for me is not in the 6-letter word, but what makes something or someone useful. For whom? Who determines the traits, that are deemed useful. No offense to Siri, my quest was extended. I turned to various sources, journal articles, the What Works Clearinghouse, and my favorite resource of all, children's books. In my role as a graduate research assistant on Project Grow, a reading intervention spearheaded by Dr. Stephanie Al-Utaiba, I helped design lesson plans on enhancing social and emotional learning for teachers to use in their classrooms. One of the 20 books in that series is the book Spoons, which explores the feeling of uselessness, suggesting that a spoon may seem without assets in certain contexts. So I raise the question to you, when or where is a spoon considered useful? Even as you respond to this simple question, I challenge you to think, for whom? We are constantly bringing our own assets into the meaning-making process. If I were to ask my teta the same question, she would refer back to the collectibles she has on the shelf with the names of foreign cities she had visited over the years. She may even add that it's useful for stirring her Turkish coffee. I guarantee you that neither scenario is present in that book. But aren't both just as useful? This diversity in perspectives reflects how we view assets. While the world may see a spoon as merely a utensil used for ice cream or cereal, my teta, my grandma, sees it as a collectible or a tool for stirring her coffee 4 to 6 times a day. Scholars have examined assets in various ways. Some as funds of knowledge, encompassing home language, family values, traditions, cooking, politics, entertainment, and music, while others highlight linguistic, social, and cultural strengths. Assets are the valuable resource and strengths that individuals bring to the learning table. It is the Jordanian family that listened to Kulthum growing up, and the Palestinian child that knows Dabke. These strengths can include diverse experiences, language skills, and cultural insights. They form the building blocks for a richer educational experience. Assets are only as useful as we help them to be, or as willing as we are to value them. Take a spoon, for instance. It can serve various purposes. However, if it's tucked away in the back of the drawer, its utility is limited. And even then, it'll be something like a souvenir, something my grandma would still cherish. So before all else, I ask that you take time to capture the assets of your family. And here's a simple tool to help you recognize these distinctive experiences and skills that you bring with you into any given space. Now that you've recognized these assets, I ask that you take time to celebrate them. Bring Fairuz and Kulthum music back to your morning routines. Bring back the dances, the art, the slam poetry. Bring back the meals and the spices. Bring back the flags and their stories. Before we move on, allow me to share a glimpse about myself and the so-called assets I bring with me today. I'm a Palestinian American, bilingual female, educator, doctoral candidate at Southern Methodist University, and a poet with an immense passion for bringing about social justice, advocating for voices that have been historically marginalized, and doing so through storytelling. I have taught special education since 2017, designed curriculums, and spent the duration of my master's doing reading education and reading therapy with Palestinians. My current research inquiries are centered around the use of peer-assisted learning strategies to empower Arab immigrants in the diaspora, and I'd be happy to talk more about that later. One of the pillars of my teaching and research philosophy is building community and tearing apart these arbitrary walls that have separated individuals over the years. Therefore, on this screen onward, you will notice that I've included my LinkedIn account at the bottom. giving you ample opportunities throughout this webinar to reach out. A simple hi would suffice, but it is also a space to ask questions, comment, provide feedback, build, or even join a community. With that being said, I know that webinars can be dense to get through, despite your level of motivation. But back when I was a special ed teacher, I used to put PowerPoints together for my class all the time. And here's what I lived by. If I'm bored teaching it, you're definitely bored learning it. Think about that as you impart wisdom onto others, especially our little ones these days with an attention span of a TikTok video. Let's be honest, that includes adults too. Anyway, I am going to challenge you to write the names of all the books, all the children's books I mentioned throughout this webinar. So let's get started. Now, as experts on the topic of assets, I'd like you to think of the following scenario and pull out the assets. During my dissertation studies, I read the book, My Father's Shop, to a 4-year-old who was learning Arabic. The book talks about a little Turkish boy who is helping with his father's shop. When a rooster starts following him around town, he learns to speak rooster in so many languages. The boy and the rooster attract people back to his father's shop, creating a lively scene that inadvertently contributes to the family business of selling Oriental rugs. Upon completing the book, I asked Jamila to tell me what she learned about the Turkish boy and his family. She replied, "They sell rugs like the one Mama has." When prompted for more details, she mentioned he learned to speak rooster to help his dad. Jamila also excitedly shared that she's learning Arabic, just like the boy in the story. In this scenario, the assets emerge as cultural connections, language acquisition, and family traditions, all woven seamlessly into the narrative. Building on that understanding, we'll explore the advantages of bi- and multilingualism and discuss how families can naturally incorporate multiple languages at home. Research highlighted on the left side of the slide indicates that raising multilingual children can have a multitude of positive effects. It has been associated with enhanced literacy and improved language skills, increased opportunities for travel, and this is especially for work-related purposes. It fostered a stronger sense of self-identity. It deepened the connection to their cultural heritage and enriched experiences in enjoying music, movies, and story time. Drawing from the research published in the American Journal of Speech-Language Pathology, we find a strong emphasis on the significance of supporting a child's home language for comprehensive language development. It highlights that learning the first language often serves as a facilitator for learning a second language. These findings, consistently supported by various studies, underscore the wide-ranging benefits of nurturing bi- and multilingualism in children. Some actionable steps that you can consider include sticking with your heritage language, embracing and reinforcing the use of the language tied to your cultural heritage contributes significantly to a child's language proficiency and overall development. Also, make learning fun. Play card games, read books, sing, cook cultural food. Anyway, I grew up with a phrase that I am sure many people have heard before. In Arabic, the phrase says, "Mish hon," which suggests not here. Bilingual individuals have often heard that phrase in one language or another and continue to face the perception of being two separate monolinguals in one, influenced by the idea of adhering to one language at a time approach. This viewpoint has placed significant pressure on immigrant children, guiding them into distinct linguistic paths that have been outlined by Kaufman in 2000. One prevalent pathway emerges when children primarily encounter a dominant language, limiting opportunities to use their inherited language. This often leads them toward a language shift pathway. Another pathway occurs when families intentionally choose to reside in linguistically isolated communities, aiming to maintain their exclusive use of their heritage language. Unfortunately, individuals following these paths encounter challenges in preserving their minority language in their host countries. Moreover, they face considerable difficulty in acquiring a new language later on. Researchers are moving away from that and delving into a relatively new domain of translanguaging practices. So let's start by understanding what translanguaging is and its relevance in supporting language development. Translanguaging goes beyond using multiple languages. It's a natural, fluid communication where one language supports the understanding of another. Research suggests that translanguaging enhances cognitive flexibility and problem-solving skills. Growing up in a bilingual home myself meant school was in English while everything at home was in Arabic. Until one day, it wasn't. Ever try texting your family? It's a mix of languages, with a sprinkle of cousins and your grandma on a WhatsApp group. The languages that emerge go far beyond a bilingual or multilingual model. It's a model described by Garcia as involving the seamless and purposeful use of multiple languages and resources in the same learning context, utilizing all your assets and resources to make meaning. Translanguaging recognizes individuals' cultural and linguistic resources, creating spaces where languages can be used interchangeably. This is where our homes become a linguistic playground, where children effortlessly navigate languages. So what can we do? We can start by creating a language-rich environment. Fostering a language-rich environment draws inspiration from studies published in the Journal of Speech, Language, and Hearing Research. It includes surrounding children with words, labeling objects, creating word-rich displays, and incorporating literacy into daily life. The second is encouraging conversations. Research from the Journal of Early Childhood Literacy indicates that children exposed to rich conversation develop stronger language skills. The third is diversifying literacy sources. In a comprehensive literature review exploring the literacy practices of refugee families, various text types, both paper, digital, and live, were analyzed. 7 articles from 5 journals offered emic perspectives, providing an inside standpoint on the experiences of refugee families. The studies were predominantly conducted nationally, with 6 in the United States and 1 internationally in South Africa. Within the context of hybrid linguistic homes, the articles encompassed 8 languages, 5 Arab speakers, 4 Burmese, 2 Nepali, 2 Karen, and 1 Iranian. The majority of the articles highlighted family desires to maintain cultural beliefs related to children's identity. Through inductive coding, articles were categorized based on the type and text used by families. The categories, print, live, and digital, were mutually inclusive, with 3 studies overlapping in more than one category. The data presented here on this screen, in this chart, offers a glimpse into the diversity of sources, providing flexibility for you to choose what works best for your home. Selecting books doesn't come as seamless as listening to music, cooking, or practicing hospitality. Oftentimes, if we aren't careful, we end up choosing a similar type, a uniform character and behavioral traits associated with gender or professions assigned to certain cultures. In fact, researchers such as Dr. Bishop emphasize the need for caution in who, when, and how often some characters are represented, as it tends to devalue others around. Diversifying books helps students build cultural competence. Sensitivity to cultural nuances and diverse family practices creates an inclusive environment. Acknowledging and respecting these differences is foundational to effective literacy coaching. But the library is a scary and big place to enter. Where do I start? What books do I select? Nothing is wrong with having certain characters, or genders, or types of genres. It's a matter of diversifying, finding ways to connect it to the child. For my students, these books might be The Name Jar, The Sandwich Swap, or The Proudest Blue. As I mentioned, during my master's with University of Florida, I returned to Ramallah to work with Palestinian children, assisting them in acquiring language, developing social-emotional learning skills, and essentially processing trauma. Even with my rapport as a Palestinian, I collaborated closely with these families to select books that would resonate with their assets and their children's experiences. Research on culturally responsive practices argues that building on what children bring promotes students' academic trajectories and engagement. Some of the pillars of characteristics I look for in books involve diversifying the scope. I can't always find books about my students, but I seek an overlap in experience, identification, self-determination, struggle, ability, language, culture, emotions, coping. Here are the characteristics that guide my selection. Now let's address the when. When do we have time to pick and read a book? Well, let me just say that a plan is only as good as those who execute it. Research consistently underscores the significance of routines in a child's literacy development. Establishing consistent practices at home can significantly impact a child's language and cognitive skills. It frees cognitive space by providing a clear understanding of what happens next. Here are some actionable steps. 1. Find a time and be consistent. 2. Find a spot and make it into a reading nook. 3. Set rules, like keeping and maintaining a space that is quiet. The purpose of this webinar was to empower caregivers as literacy coaches. So in addition to your current responsibilities as caregivers and practitioners, your role as a coach could include one of the following, or all of them. For instance, being a reading facilitator, encouraging and engaging in reading activities with the child. A routine builder, establishing consistent reading routines at home, providing structure that supports the child's literacy development. A language model, demonstrate and encourage the use of language in various contexts. Literacy environment creator, cultivate a literacy-rich environment at home, offering access to books, creating quiet reading spaces, and integrating literacy into daily life. But most importantly, a reflective partner. Collaborate with the child in discussions about the stories you read, encouraging reflection and critical thinking to deepen comprehension and connection to the material. In dialogic reading interventions like Project Grow that I mentioned earlier, literacy specialists rely heavily on the dialogue part, asking questions that build on student knowledge. To learn more about those practices, I provided 2 links at the bottom of the screen. I appreciate your presence and engagement in this crucial discussion today on empowering caregivers as literacy coaches. So to wrap up, I put together a simple activity that can help you get started. Feel free to complete this as many times as needed. It starts off with, my name is, and I am a mother, aunt, father, grandma, caregiver, uncle, friend, sister. One of my assets is, it could be cooking, singing, entertainment, reading, fixing, praying. As soon as you pick one of those, follow up with the next part, which is, for this asset, I can, and insert an example of what you can do. When I do so, I speak, or I prefer to speak, Arabic, English, French. I need a children's book about, and include a topic that you would like to read to your child to help me teach them about, and then insert what you would like to teach them. So to make this a little more concrete, I would like to share an example about myself. My name is Mai, and though I do not have children yet, I am an older sister. One of my assets is cooking. For this asset, I can make msakhan, which is the chicken on bread that we saw earlier. When I do so, I like to speak Arabic. I need a children's book about Palestinian food to help me teach others about cultural food. And I've provided an example of a book that fits my assets and the ways I would like to share these assets with others. After completing this exercise, determine when you will read the book. For instance, I will read this book as part of our bedtime routine. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to others. You are part of a community. Reach out to a friend, a local librarian, a teacher, or email me. Personally, I would love to learn more about your assets and ways I can help you select books or support your children and students. Thank you all again for joining me today. If you have further questions or would like additional resources, please don't hesitate to reach out. I look forward to your continued commitment to fostering literacy development in your homes and your communities. Now I invite you to ask any questions. This can be in the form of an email or just a quick message on LinkedIn. I look forward to hearing from you all. Have a good one and be safe, and remember that we are a community here to support one another.